Hello and welcome to part 3 of the Edge of Fate Mega Review, where today we're going everything Sandbox related. Short intro today because this script is 7 pages long, so strap in, grab a snack, you know the deal at this point. The new armor archetypes are here. Higher tier armor having higher stat total rolls, and tier 5s will have stat tuning, but I have no idea what that looks like yet, because I have yet to acquire a single piece of tier 5 armor. I think I've already spoken my piece about armor archetypes enough, but the too long didn't read is that I wish we either just had more archetypes, or just still had random rolls still in the game. I think that with the archetypes, your builds get a little shoehorned in a direction that you may or may not want to take it as of right now. When we do get more archetypes, which I do think will happen, builds will open up slightly more, but only launching with 6 was probably a bad idea. And speaking of builds, let's talk about the melee changes, because they were significant. In terms of global melee changes, I think they mostly ended up being nerfs, outside of that specific Titan build, which is mostly on wishful ignorance, just being really good right now. It turns out, off-stacking is something that happens a lot more than I thought it did, even if you weren't really trying to. Having said that, melee builds do still feel pretty strong, at least the ones that I've messed around with. I've mostly been on Warlock these last few weeks, since leveling multiple characters is kind of slow and painful. I would be remiss to talk about the melee change without talking about the fact that Flechette Storm is obliterating just everything right now. So, have fun with that while you can, because wishful ignorance will get its rocked eventually. The two builds that did actually get their rocked, kind of, are the Prismatic Consecration build on Titan and the Prismatic Incinerator Snap build for Warlock. I should clarify, I still think these builds are quite strong. I think they just kind of got screwed over by the new stat system. Speaking of which, the new stats are here. We got some old stats baked into base kit, notably Rezil at tier 10, which is very appreciated. But the real question we have to ask is, Mr./Mrs. Destiny 2 build crafting YouTuber, are the new stats any good at opening up build options? First of all, that was incredibly vain of me to just claim that title. Holy fuck, lower your expectations. Second, I would say yes. On one hand, the new stats, especially the new bonuses you get for going above 100, open up a lot of new options. Super build like Nighthawk, Pyrogale, and Nova Bomb setups now have a reason to actually spec into their super, and we'll see notable gains in super generation and damage. Grenade builds actually have a reason to spec into grenades for more damage and for more regen, even from chunk-based stuff like Devour, but I do think that two of these stats in particular have some problems. There is still a dumb stat, and it is health. As a stat, it is almost entirely useless. From 0 to 100, you get extra health on picking up an orb and extra flinch resistance. From 100 to 200, it gains slightly higher shield capacity and regeneration rate, which sounds super nice. The problem is that nobody in their right mind is going to spend 100 build points towards health just to get slightly faster regeneration. There's also really no reason to care about flinch resist, because it's just frankly not that big of a deal in PvP. And if you do care about getting health from orbs, you can just throw on recuperation to get you that extra little chunk of healing you need, even if it got gutted for absolutely no good reason. And then there's weapons, which is kind of stupid and dumb, and I hate it. Unlike the health stat, it's dumb and stupid in the other direction. From 0 to 100, it grants extra reload handling and damage versus non-boss combatants, up to a maximum of 15% for non-heavy, 10% for heavy weapons. And then from 100 to 200, it grants extra ammo from dropped bricks and extra boss damage on the same scalar as 0 to 100. The reason this stat is ridiculous is not because of the extra damage at all. I think that's actually kind of inconsequential, but mostly because of the ammo economy, which I will talk more about later, but the too long didn't read is that the ammo economy sucks really bad right now, like even more than it used to feel before. And that problem gets exacerbated the more members you have in your fire team. Because weapons gives you more ammo per brick, it feels borderline mandatory if you want to have consistent ammo in something like a raid. But again, more on that later. But before we talk about that, we need to talk more about weapons. And I'm talking about the actual weapons this time, not the stat. Linear fusion rifles are no longer the god tier weapons that they once were. mostly due to particle reconstruction no longer being in the game, meaning that the Queenbreaker meta is finally over. Thank God, it was getting boring. Nowadays, the damage meta is pretty open, with a notable exception, but we're not talking about that thing yet. I think that in terms of rates, this diversity in strategies is pretty good. The artifact doesn't necessarily push you in one direction or the other. Now, again, there's an outlier that I'll be talking about. Outside of that, the weapon tuning pass was actually pretty minimal in terms of legendary weapon archetypes, and many of the changes that were made to exotics were either not that big of a deal, a bug fix, or something much smaller than we expected. And yeah, that last line was for hierarchy of needs. While in theory, 15% extra damage to Levy Breath is nice, in practice, it just ends up not really being that much compared to more meta options. The changes that were made were mostly perk changes, with area denial frames getting their orb printer rolls gutted, 1-2 punch getting updated to work with all melees instead of just the basic melee, kinetic tremors getting a sizable buff on certain weapon frames, and eager edge tracking now being significantly less aggressive. Thank God for that. Unfortunately, the main thing driving the meta right now seems to be the ammo changes. It sucks. And I hate it. That's it. Send ski. Okay, there's more nuance than that. The way that ammo drops work has been entirely reworked from pre-Edge of Fate. Random ammo bricks are just gone. Now, ammo drops by filling up a meter at the bottom of your weapon tray. Once that bar is full, the next enemy you kill drops a brick of the respective type. This, in theory, solves some of the randomness that the old system had, where sometimes you would just be swimming in power ammo, and other times you'd be dying of thirst and have like 3 grenade launcher shots for DPS. The problems with this new system are numerous. For starters, the ammo bricks that do drop are worth about half of what they used to be, meaning you might need 6 to 8 bricks to get full ammo, and that is a lot more than you think it is. On top of that, these bricks, while they do spawn more consistently, do not necessarily spawn more plentifully, meaning you've got exponentially less ammo than you did before. As if that weren't enough, other people's bricks do not drop for you, meaning that if your teammates are running an annoying Necroclaw snap spam setup with Graviton Lance, I mean, seriously, what kind of asshole would do that on main? Right, guys? Are getting all of the kills, you get none of the ammo. I think that for solo activities, this system is actually pretty good, since there are enough kills to go around to give you enough ammo. Problem is that as you add more people to the fire team, the system just gets worse for everyone. This gets even worse once you step into a raid and do mechanics for a boss encounter. Under the old ammo system, it didn't really matter what role you were doing on the team, because if you were doing mechanics, you could just scrounge for whatever scraps your ad clearers were doing after damage and probably be just fine. Nowadays, kiss any chance of having full ammo past the first DPS phase goodbye if you're doing mechanics. And let me tell you, it feels pretty bad to do the most important part of a boss fight and then be punished for doing so with less ammo. So, too long didn't read. Please change the ammo system so that I can do mechanics and still have power ammo for DPS. To be honest, I would rather have the system that we had before instead of what we have going on right now. The system in and of itself affects the weapon meta, leading high damage, highly ammo efficient weapons like Thunderlord to be really strong. And this is the part where I ramble about Thunderlord for several minutes straight, because I think Thunderlord metas are lame, and this is the Sandbox video, so if I don't speak my piece here, I basically never will. I hate Thunderlord. Okay, kind of. I should state very clearly, I do not necessarily have beef with the concept of Thunderlord fundamentally. I think it can be part of a meta without being over-centralizing, and that the conceptual design space that it occupies is one that is worthy of being filled. Thunderlord is what I would call an M1 damage weapon. You hold M1, and you do damage. The idea is that this is a consistent, low-risk, relatively easy source of damage compared to other options. Problem is that right now, Thunderlord, overall, appears to be the best damage strategy, barring any kind of extreme damage phase like Atrax, which is very atypical and can kind of be disregarded here. Thunderlord is supposed to be a safe damage option in comparison to other options at the cost of lower damage because of its ease of use. other rotations not only require much more setup, but also have a lot higher difficulty of execution and much steeper DPS loss if you do mess it up. The reason I dislike Thunderlord is because right now, not only is it easier than most other damage options, it's just better than those options most of the time because of its safety and ammo efficiency. While its peak DPS does appear to be lower than other options, at least for my preliminary testing, that DPS is much easier to sustain through an entire phase or even an entire encounter than those other options. On top of that, it's a machine gun, meaning it benefits from the increased ammo efficiency of that weapon type due to very large reserves, meaning it's going to run out of ammo much less quickly than other weapon types. On top of that, it's now better than it was pre-Edge of Fate because the Catalyst got a buff. Now, each Lightning Strike returns more ammo to the mag than was used to cause that Lightning Strike, meaning you can potentially fire the weapon continuously for the entire damage phase or until you run out of ammo. So, yeah, I think Thunderlord is lame because of its ease of use, competitive damage output, and ammo efficiency. I dislike it because of the state it's currently in, and I want to see it nerfed in some minor way, along with systemic changes to the ammo economy to make power ammo easier to come by for players doing mechanics in a raid setting. I think if we do that, Thunderlord will be in a good state. Outside of the Thunderlord shenanigans, I think the Sandbox is in a pretty solid place right now. My main concern is the ammo economy, especially as it relates to raid boss encounters actively punishing the players doing mechanics. Outside of those concerns, though, it's actually pretty good. You're not explicitly pushed towards one option or another, and most damage strategies are just dependent on the boss fight as well as personal preference. I do have a piece to say about armor swapping, but I've already gotten on my soapbox this video, so we're doing that next week, which I plan to do more endgame stuff. I will see you next week for the endgame review, as well as the end of the game review. We're doing the Buildcraft update guide after that, and hopefully build videos will return after the update guide. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now!